So, hello and welcome to the sixth episode of Cardinal Control Room. My name is Nathan Wilson. Today, we're going to do a little bit of an update from the last episode over the writer's strike, what's been happening since that ended, and then kind of what's about to happen in the future. I've got Alex and Scott with me today. So, if you guys want to go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Hey, I'm Scott Edlin, alumni from Ball State from 2010. I'm a TV producer out in LA.
My name is Alex Gracie. I am a 2015 Ball State alumni. I am a lighting console programmer here in Los Angeles.
Perfect. So, the writer's strike lasted almost 150 days. Um,
Yeah.
and then after that, it seemed in what we could see over here that everything you know, just restarted. Um, is that what really happened, or is there still kind of a lull in what you guys have been seeing production wise?
A lull is an understatement. There's basically nothing going on from where, I mean, there is, but there's not. I mean, it's a really complicated issue. There's like a lot that's happening. And right now, there's been enough people out of work that things are starting to viral. There's like a video of a producer that's gone viral on TikTok talking about the situation. And it's just kind of starting to be there's just so many things now beyond the strikes that have like kind of coalesced. And we're just kind of dealing with like, I mean, it's a really it's a big it's like a really nuanced and like there's a lot of stuff going on. So where do we want to start, I guess, is the question.
You can start wherever you want to.
Okay. Well, and I don't want to take up all the time, I'm sorry. But
You're okay.
it's interesting because I've kind of got a unique view on this because I actually recently got a job, believe it or not. In this climate, got a job, but it was interesting because instead of a production company making this TV show that I'm working on, it's actually private equity, right? So it's a group of business people that have put money together to make their own TV show.
Whoa.
And that's how it's being funded and that's why they're, be able to shoot. But that is completely different than it's ever been. It comes in with its own risks. And I think it's just kind of a example of how things we're in a middle of an extreme sea change, like a complete change in the industry. Like everything is changing from the model of how things are for advertising to subscription services. Like all of this has come to a head all at once, and that's leading to the slowdown. But yeah, it's a big change. That's what's going on.
Yeah,
Alex,
I
what have you
I
seen?
I absolutely agree with the lull. There's certainly been like a huge lull. My union, IATSE Local 728, our call steward put out like a pretty good um his thoughts on the matter essentially, and so he is experienced enough to have gone through all three of the writer strikes in the 80s, as well as the one that was more recent than the one that we had last year. But he was saying everybody imagines that when a strike is over it's like a faucet turning on, but it's much more gradual than that, even in his experience. So I think we're combating that, combined with, and this is just speculation, a burst of the streaming bubble. I feel like we saw leading
Yep.
up to the most previous IATSE negotiations, as well as the WGA and SAG negotiations. I feel like we saw a lot of like a battle to compete between these different streamers. They all wanted to be the number one streamer. So if people were canceling the other ones, they wanted to be like the top dog, so to speak. And so I feel like that race has already been run. For the most part, if you were going to cancel your subscriptions, you probably canceled them already last year when we were not getting new content on them. And I feel like there's not a ton of new subscribers that they can add to this. And so, I feel like they're in like a bit of a maintenance rather than a building period. And so I feel like even though they are, contractually allowed to be making content right now, a lot of them have scaled back. And, anybody's guess is as good as why, but I definitely feel like we're seeing a significant lull in production.
A lull in
Yeah,
production and a little bit of a lull in releases. It seems like you have companies that are straight up making movies, getting them all the way through post, and then before they release them, they just say, we're not gonna put that out there. So do you see that as another way of trying to save a little bit of money off the top, or kind of a more nefarious way of trying to get a little bit of we're going to spend all this money, make it seem like we're going to put something out, and then, oh, it was a business loss, so we're going to see a return on the back end?
well, that's somewhat of a different issue because you're talking about the Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner movie, right?
I'm talking about there's been a lot of projects. That's
Yeah.
one of them, but there's been a
Yeah,
lot.
I mean that's pretty nefarious in itself that you cut an entire movie and then you shelve it. It's like it's straight up Ed Wood all over again. Except Ed Wood put his movies out, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
That's pretty nefarious, in my opinion. But to go back to streaming, I think real quick, just to step back to streaming, that's a huge. He's completely correct in that the bubble is burst. Previous to streaming, so previous to the streaming boom, right, and leading into COVID, the way that advertisers and like it was easy to tell who like was watching your stuff with Nielsen ratings and butts and seats in theaters. And then when streaming came along, they switched over to a subscriber method, right? So it's like then they counted their how well they were doing in the profits with by how many new subscribers you could get. And like he said, they hit a finite amount, especially an elevated amount in the pandemic because more people were watching. So that inflated. Then there's only so many people born in a year. There's only so many people that can sign up for streaming. So that trickled off. And then now advertisers are scrambling to figure out where to put their money because they're making more. You can make more money advertising on YouTube if you like make a deal like with Mr. Beast, or somebody that's big on YouTube. You can make more money advertising on YouTube now and TikTok than what they were making previous like on television. Now there's big deals like NFL, NHL, these big sports, deals that are still done on television for sure, but live sports is the only thing propping up terrestrial television anymore. So the advertisers, they're trying to figure out where to put their money to get it back the best return. They're seeing Gen Z, they're seeing cord cutting, they're seeing streaming and what the state is, and that's really what's going on. Because now, like, just to use the example, like this show that I'm on right now, like they're these private equity guys, they're going after advertisers. They're like cutting out the middleman. They're going straight to the advertisers to advertise what they're putting out on YouTube. So it's just like, now it's just the Wild West all of a sudden. It all came out of nowhere, but it's all become the Wild West.
Well, and you said that you've got live sports staying on regular broadcast television, but Apple acquired all of the MLS games
Sure,
for the most
sure.
parts. You've
It's
got
changing.
Peacock making games exclusive. You got them having races. Now you have WWE moving to Netflix. You have the Paul brothers doing their boxing fights on Netflix Live.
Yep.
So now you've got the streaming services not making original content, kind of doing what studios would do back when the strikes were going on. We're going to make a whole bunch of reality shows because we can't use union people, but we can use non-union people to make reality shows and get those out there. So now,
Except they're not making reality shows.
right. But what I'm saying is back in the day, that's what they would do. So
Right.
now they can't get that to happen. So now they're kind of eating away at live sports and getting all those, you know, back in the day when all these streamers were starting out, everyone was cord cutting and I'm going to do Netflix, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But now all the different broadcast companies have their own streaming apps and it's starting to add up to where you're paying more than what you'd pay for Dish back in the day.
Cable
So,
all over again.
yep. Um, so let's kind of move to AI and what we've seen take over AI wise, and then we can get back to what's going on. In November of last year, CAA, which is one of the bigger talent agencies. They signed an AI company called Futureverse. And then about 24 hours ago, prior to us recording this on the 23rd of March, it was reported that OpenAI has been meeting with bigger Hollywood studios. So we kind of talked about this before. What do you think the impact of these kind of agencies and studios meeting with these companies is going to have on future projects and staffing and things of that nature?
I think AI is an inevitability. It's an innovation. So there's going to be an element of it, and I think it's good that they're having the meetings. Like, there's just no way to stop the future. Like, maybe you can figure out a way to regulate it, but like, it's just too useful. It's too, and like, I'm not, me personally, I'm not afraid of the creative side of AI anymore. Like, I've kind of come to the conclusion that like AI or robots, machines, I just think they're always going to lack like a point of view. Like, you're just never going to get like that human point of view. Like, you can spot AI art, like anybody can now. Like, so for example, that Interview with the Devil, or like Late Night with the Devil, or whatever, there's a big protest against it in the TV world because they used AI imagery, or at least they've been accused of it. I'm not sure if they
They did.
agreed or not. They
They
did?
came
Okay,
out and
well,
said that
there
they
you
did,
go.
yeah.
Like, they
Yep.
spot it, and like, these are people that spotted it in the trailer and was like, hey bro, like, you're cutting costs by, and like, it's obvious, it looks bad. Like, it's just, it doesn't look good. So, but I am worried. I mean, I think a lot of people are worried about AI taking jobs, and there's a lot of like, data input jobs, and there's a lot of script writing stuff, and that AI could, get in there, and if used in correctly, an anti-worker, then it will take jobs. So I think the inevitability is there. They just got to figure out, and hopefully the deals get made, the correct deals get made, that we don't lose too many jobs. But I think it's an inevitability.
Yeah, I'm with you where I feel like it is a genie out of the bottle thing, but I do feel like I'm just hoping, at least at this point, that one of the roles of the next IATSE negotiations is to regulate, limit, curtail, to
Sure.
make sure that it's not too destructive to the job market. I do feel like that we can spot a lot of AI generated content now, but I mean, we're also looking at like a very early version of AI. And
True.
so these lines, I feel like the further we get down the road are going to get blurred. And also, like, I guess we have to ask ourselves, like, yeah, we can spot it now, and a lot of people are concerned about it now, but when it's like difficult to tell years down the line in the future, are people really going to be checking the credits and be like, I don't know, there's about 20
Right.
people less on these credits than my other favorite movie, you know what I mean? So I feel like the I don't think it has to come from the consumer. I think it has to come from a combination of labor unions and the employer to make sure that we're not decimating people that rely on working in entertainment for their livelihoods.
Yeah, that stresses the point of the importance of unions. That's the only
Absolutely.
way we can combat this. Like, otherwise, AI would have taken all of our jobs already because of how this country is run. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think not only AI, but you have other technologies too, like you have VR, that whole the remake of The Lion King. I don't know if you guys know, but it was all shot in VR.
mm,
All of the equipment and everything was built into the program, and they like had VR lighting setups and cameras and everything. It was kind of cool. I was at a screening, and the people who were in charge of that were talking about it. It was a big like VR conference. So it's kind of crazy the different technologies that we have coming out, kind of like the big LED screens that have taken
sure.
over green screens and um, those kind of things. So yeah, you're not going to be able to completely get rid of technology, but you, like you guys are saying, you kind of need to find ways to make sure that you're not getting rid of people by using technology. It's kind of like, using self-checkout at, different places. We got rid of a lot of jobs by doing that. And now we're starting to see that maybe we shouldn't have done that because now people are walking out with items.
I must be a Luddite because I don't use self-checkout at grocery stores because I know it's a good union job. And my
I don't
wife is
either.
always looking at me. She's like, "Why don't you just use self-checkout? We have four things." And I said, I don't want to. I don't do it." So, but I'm with you. And hopefully we aren't 20 years down the road and people are thinking about movies the way we thought about self-checkout.
Yeah, that's why it put a smile on my face when, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but the new trailer for the new Beetlejuice movie, um, Tim Burton came out and said that he's using a lot of stop motion in it and
Oh, no.
bring back that kind of way of doing things instead of using VFX and thing, which I know that's another set of jobs, but it's kind of nice to bring back the old feel of practical effects and that kind of thing too, because I think we've been missing that outside of B movies and things for a while. So we'll kind of get into it a little bit if you guys want to, because we already have talked about it a little bit. The upcoming strikes, what do those entail, and how many people, um, like, can you guys kind of expand on the different crafts that are covered under IATSE? Because I don't think people understand, most people don't understand how many different people on set are covered under that.
For sure. So, for a long time, we were called the Backlot 13. The Backlot 13 is a lot of your IATSE locals that service film sets. You have, man, this would be a good quiz if I could name all 13. I don't think I can, but we have local 600 that does camera assistance. My local itself, which is 728, which does set lighting technicians, the whole department. 80, which is like a conglomerate because it includes multiple. It's grips, craft services, which is snacks, your set medic who makes sure that somebody's there in case somebody gets hurt on set. Anyways, you've got all of these people belong to what we call the Backlot 13. I do believe they added the Animation Guild to this one and didn't update the name. But so there is the Backlot 13 and these other ones. So they negotiate in a combination of together and separately. So they go into negotiations at the same round, but they all also have their own turn to speak. So the Backlot 13 share a lot of common interests. I'm not on my negotiations committee, so I'm speculating a lot of this, but I would imagine the AI conversation is involved in that. Our rates have not adequately kept up with the rate of inflation and the skyrocketing cost of living. So I would imagine that better pay is involved. We're also seeing with a reduction in hours, a reduction in the size of television shows. We're going from like 22 seasons where you used to work 10 months on CSI something. You're shrinking down to 8 to 10 episode seasons. So I think one of the other things that people are going to be asking for is less hours worked in order to keep health insurance. And I don't want to get too into that, but you have to work a certain amount of hours to keep your health insurance, which previously was never very difficult. Now it's just getting more and more difficult with the throttling of things that are being made, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a multitude of different things that all the Backlot 13 plus the others that we've added are interested in. And then each individual local will argue for things that they think are instrumental to the members of that local as well.
Yeah, I think you explained it really well. So any art, there's a production union, there's a lot of the people that you see in the credits of the films that you watch, if they don't fall under PGA, WGA, DGA, those kind of things, they're going to fall under IATSE. If you see the IATSE seal at the end of the movie, there you go.
Yep.
The upcoming strikes that are going to happen, what kind of impact do you see them already having on projects that you would see kind of coming out around this time? Because right now, again, some people might not know, but around this time is when the startup of pilot season would happen. So like people would start kind of walking around trying to sell their scripts and or just trying to film them and get them to a studio and see if they could get them picked up. So what does this upcoming strike kind of do to that along with the projects that were already going on?
I mean, honestly, I would say no one really knows. I think there's more to it than the strike at this point. But yeah, I mean, I don't really know what's gonna do, so I don't have a, I don't really know.
Fair. Firstly, not to tisk tisk, we don't know that the strikes are coming. Theoretically, the studios could show up to the negotiations and want to play ball. I think it would be advantageous for them. It would be advantageous for our members as well to find some middle ground, of course. But if that middle ground doesn't come, we could see strikes in late January or late July, excuse me, early August, depending on. You can file. This is not the correct terminology, but essentially for an extension on negotiations. If you think that they're going well, if you think that they're getting close, we can. So the date itself is not like a set in stone thing, but we do think that from now, spring, when we're recording this, through the summer, that there will be talks in this. If the talks do not go well, then we would be looking at strikes. But I do think a lot of the issues that we're going to be facing are issues that the employer, the studios, and the negotiators who represent us, the laborers. I do think, unfortunately, we are pretty far away from each other on a lot of issues. But I mean, certainly, hopefully not. But since there is the looming possibility of a strike, I do think that is also affecting the throttling of work that we talked about in the beginning. So let's say if you've got a season of television, and if you were like halfway through it right before WGA strike started and the SAG strike overlapped it, maybe you finished up the other half of that, or maybe if you have a movie that takes less than a couple months, maybe you try and run that through in this gap between the two. But if you've got like a traditional network television show and you've got like 22 episodes to get through, it's probably a smart bet for a lot of them to want to put their hands in their pockets and wait to see how these negotiations are going before starting something like that. Because if you sink a lot of money into the start of a television show and then you have to pick it up later, it's very difficult from a logistical standpoint to do something like that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That the strike isn't guaranteed yet. We're not to a point where we know it's going to happen for sure. And that's kind of what I meant, but I really don't know because like they could negotiate and everything could be cool. But, there's more going on because they're not shooting like, yeah, at this point, you would think there'd be more shoots, more production ramping up, even a little bit. But there seems to be an artificial kink in the hose. And one thing to point out, too, is that they are shooting, but they're shooting in Europe and Canada right now. So a lot of sound stages across Europe are filled right now. Canadian sound stages are filled right now. There's a lot of famous examples. So Hollywood is filming right now. They're just not filming in America. So it makes you wonder, I put my tinfoil cap on, you start wondering what exactly is going on. So, there's a lot of speculation. There should be more production going on. There should be. There's not even reality TV production going on right now. It's just what we call shiny floor shows. So you're like America's Got Talents, you're The Voices, stuff where
I've never heard that term before, and I love it. I don't do a ton of work in reality, but I did a little like a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Shiny floor show. That's hilarious. Sorry, keep going.
Shiny floor shows will keep shooting because they have longstanding contracts. They're cheap. You don't want to fly Blake Shelton to Budapest. So, it's like, but that's a very small amount in comparison to, and like what you're not seeing is new money going out, new shows coming in, and them taking any risks right now. There's complete risk adverse feeling right now in the industry. For how long? Who knows?
Would you say that you get better tax write-offs in places like Georgia, Canada, over in Europe than you would in California, since California is trying to recover from the previous strikes and how much they got hit with before?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what tax incentives are for, regardless of what's going on in LA. I mean, for a long time, there's been incentives in like Atlanta or, in Georgia, and like you mentioned, but like, and yes, it is cheaper to film in other countries sometimes, but also in other countries, you don't have to deal with the unions. So makes you wonder. So in my opinion, there is a anti-union sentiment in Hollywood, with the Hollywood elite or whatever, the production companies, etc. And some of this is tactics to continue to hold power, in my opinion. So it goes beyond money. A lot of it's money, but money is fluid. So then power is the most important. So I do think that's why a little bit of the kink in the hose is a power grab. They're trying to, that'd be my opinion.
Well, and during the previous strikes, you had heads of certain studios come out and straight up say that they didn't want to give up.
Right. They're saying it as loud as you. Yeah. I mean, it's not, you don't have to go that far down the rabbit hole to see that's what's happening. I mean, and then it's blatant. If they're shooting across, in another country where they would usually, like, what was that? There was an article came out. I can't remember what movie it was, but the setting is LA and they're like shooting it in Canada or they're shooting it in like Mexico. I can't quite remember the details, but like,
are you talking about the one that's shooting in Cape Town?
Is that what it is? Yeah,
I mean, we could be talking about separate things, but I did hear that there's a movie starting up. It's got, some Hollywood talent to it. It's supposed to be set in LA. They're shooting it in Cape Town. My thought is, if they think that the strike's going to happen, they can just keep shooting through it if they're in Cape Town. And I'm not exactly sure what SAG is going to do, if they're going to like call for sympathy strikes or if they're going to ask people not to work things that would be covered were they not shooting in Cape Town or whatever. But I mean, even Netflix came out and said that a sizable amount of their production budget is not going to be shot within the States.
Right.
So I do think that's like a legitimate concern for a lot of us.
Well, to me, I mean, I feel like that's an anti-union thing. So it's like they see that there's power in the people in America. People have rallied together, and so it's easy for them to just ship production overseas or go across the border up north, which is anti-worker, anti-union, and not cool. But I mean, it's part of the tactics, So that's part of what's happening right now, is that it's easy to forget that people are hired right now and working on movies, but they're doing it in like Budapest. And they're using locals there too. So they're not using union people and they're hiring all local, down to they might not have, you might have an American DP, American executive producers, American talent, but then everybody below the line is somebody local to another country. So it's very clear that, it's a power grab, or it can't be all about money. It can't be that much cheaper. It really cannot, to fly Tom Cruise that far, so who knows? But it's a strange time, and it's a quiet, war that people aren't talking about between the two sides.
So we're kind of at the impasse of everything's a little bit up in the air, still.
What's messed up, man, is none of this is really reaching the rest of America. It's funny because I mean, this is anecdotal, but talking to my family, extended family, there's not a lot of articles about this that have actually reached. And that shows you the power, what social media is algorithms, whatever. But there are articles, but they're in Deadline, right? They're not making it to the Wall Street Journal or whatever, mainstream America typically reads. It's not a story that people are talking about, that this is actually even happening, which is pretty insane.
Yeah, I feel like if they don't see us holding picket signs, it's hard for people to fathom. Yes, the work is here, but there's significantly less of it being shot in places that, the people that were previously holding those picket signs are available to work.
Correct.
Yeah, and you're still seeing people who, like you were saying earlier, you have somebody who's not worked in a literal year, in a place where they didn't have that issue before.
Precisely, yeah.
100%. There's people, I mean, there's the Deadline article that made the rounds the other day. And there was and I'm sorry, I don't have the details, but it was a producer of an Emmy-winning show who found out he won 4 Emmys while he was doing DoorDash. He hasn't worked in a year and a half.
Yep.
So what would your advice be if I were a student, a senior, about to graduate, wanting to do film and television, and wanting to make the move out to California, what would your advice be right now, for that person? Because all three of us did that. We all took the leap, but it was a different time.
It was a different time. Yeah, things have changed drastically.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I had a friend that said, "Hey, I saw what you did, and for me personally, it was 2016, and I am trying to do something similar." I would tell them to hold off. I would say pad those savings. If you want to work on your screenplay from where you live now, if you want to like try and hone in your skill set, I think it's a good time for that. But I know, 10, 20, 30-year veterans that are struggling to get work. And typically in any year that was maybe before the COVID years or after we were able to get testing and vaccines available to people, and before the last round of strikes happened, I would tell you that if you could come out with 3 to 6 months saving and you wouldn't say no to any jobs that you were offered, you could probably make it in this town. I don't know if that advice holds through today, unfortunately, which is so terribly sad because filmmaking is one of the last bastions of a blue collar job to me, where you can make an affordable living and live in a cool city like New York, Los Angeles, Atlanta, or any of the smaller markets that you can make that. But I mean, ultimately, if somebody was telling me, "Hey, I'm trying to make the great all-American dream and move out to Los Angeles and work in Tinseltown," I would tell them to delay that dream a little bit longer. I would tell them hold off at least for another year because I just don't think there's enough work going around right now for somebody to cut their teeth and break into the industry, unfortunately.
Yeah, I feel like that's true in that if the goal is to get a job right out of college, like you can't really couch surf it and it's just not working right now. That's not going to happen. So whether that mean hold off, or I would say the only way to piggyback off of that, maybe in a hopeful direction, is that we're seeing a burst in like alternative ways to create content, right? So like YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, these guys are advertisers starting to move over there, right? So now, I mean, the biggest and most important example is Mr. Beast. Whether you like his content or not, I know a couple people on his crew now. He's been hiring people from the TV and movie industry to build up this crew. He's doing it all by himself. It's like him and his mom, bro. Like, it's insane. And so it's their money. He's putting up the money, and then he just did a deal with Amazon. So there's no middleman. It's just Mr. Beast, his company, and Amazon. And they're putting up a whole new series. So it's like now, there's
How well do you know these people, and do they need a lighting console programmer is my question.
I know, right? Well, for sure. So I bring this up because I was, like a lot of people, I was out of work for a while, 5 months. So I was like looking around, I was like, who in this climate, who is actually doing well right now? And then a buddy of mine was recruited by Mr. Beast. He signed on for the 90 days and he just moved across country to go work for him. And he just got on the phone with the guy and he's like, bro, like, this is the future. He's like, there's no network. Amazon's not giving Mr. Beast notes. There's no notes. They're just letting him do what he wants because he's worth like what? $500 million. So and he made it himself. Like, I don't know the guy. I don't know if he's cool or whatever. But like, I mean, honestly, like in this world in 2024, it's a success story of building up your base organically, growing, and then being he's a good businessman, or whoever is running his business is a good business people, but they're doing it in a different way. And that's why, like me working on this show with private equity, the landscape is changing. So if you happen to have a YouTube channel, or if you're doing stuff like that, like indie movies are going to be bigger than ever. A24 is going to get more popular. Like in this climate, like the big boys are in trouble. So any of these smaller companies, this smaller stuff, the indies, there's a chance. Now, people that are established in LA kind of they're screwed because it's expensive here. So they've had these lives that they've built on these, steady paychecks for 20, 30 years to live here. And then when the nozzle's cut off, like that. But if you're young, you don't have much to lose, and you're into it, you have a YouTube channel that's kind of taking off, just dig into it, bro. Like you might be the next Mr. Beast. So I think it's just one of these times, like if you're able to take a little bit of risk, or if you're able to pivot, if you can, then you should, and or give it a try, because I think we're going to see more of this type of thing. I think this is a signal of the sea change, where you're going to see more YouTubers dealing with Netflix and Amazon. They're going to start making deals and going around Fox and NBC and all this. And then what happens when NBC and Fox start contacting popular YouTubers, popular Twitch streamers to make their own content? So it's like it's all going to start feeding into each other. Wherever the advertising dollars are, they will, if you build it, they will come. It's never been more true, I think. But it's tough, for established people to build stuff if they don't have a huge nest egg. So it gets really confusing and complicated, and it's tough for the longtime people in the business. And it's even tougher, man, for people coming out of college, I bet, because at least when we came out of college, there was a steady stream, like the river was running, and you could jump in like your little lifeboat. You could ride down the river. You could pick up trash on a set for $175 a day. Those jobs were around. They needed it. There was tons of people around. But right now, it's not happening. So if you can, look elsewhere for a while.
There's also Alex, you worked at a lighting rental place for a while when you moved out. So there's that way of doing it too. If you can't get out and do straight up go into production, if you want to do lighting, if you want to do camera, if you want to do, this or that, whatever you want to specialize in, there's other ways that people may not know about. So would you guys be able to talk about that just a little bit, of like alternatives that could get you out there, that you could be working on, that does build your skills, but you might not be stepping on a set right away?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of rental houses. I think that's the key that you're talking about here. There's a lot of camera rental, light rental places. Now, actually, I do have an anecdote about this, because within the last 5 months, I did pick up a job at a lens house. It was called Hawk Anamorphic. They're a very famous or popular type of lenses, like anamorphic lenses in the industry. And
they make great stuff.
Yeah, they're some of the best, right? Industry standard. And it's a small little building with like some little specialized, like with the team of 5 people in there. But I was able to get an office manager job, for just to pay the bills, right? So it's like there are ways that, and then the guy that got me in, I had gotten him a job previously, so it was like a scratch your back kind of thing. But what he had done is that he started a production, realized that he liked cameras and all that came with it. So he went to work at a rental house. It was one of the bigger ones. I can't remember, but they need people to pull stuff off shelves, and they were really busy at the time. This was 5-7 years ago. So, lugging stuff off the shelves, and throwing it on the truck. There you go. And then, over time, he got promoted. They really liked him. He had a good attitude. He went to Ball State. And he's from Indiana, had a good attitude, and they really liked him, and he learned how to clean lenses. And now he's working at Hawk Anamorphic, doing, it's amazing stuff, man. It looks like they're making Rolex watches in there. It's unbelievable. But yeah, I mean, there is alternate ways. And that is the thing. I think the only problem is that in the past, you were able to do these PA jobs, these super entry level jobs, and then you could eagle eye, oh, that looks like something I want to do. Right. So it's like for him, example, like he was there on set and he goes, oh, cameras, like I love how they all fit together, and the pieces. It's so cool. Like, then he talked to the guy that rented it, and then he got a job. So it's like, we used to have a climate to where you could come in super entry level and then figure it out that way. So that's kind of lacking, but there's rental houses, there's prop houses. There's microphones, audio, anything you can imagine that goes into a movie. There are suppliers, warehouses. Yes, that type of stuff does exist. But like anything, if they're not shooting a ton of stuff, especially locally, there's not going to be as many jobs. So, if the lenses aren't flying off the shelf, the cameras aren't flying off the shelf locally, like right now, they're sending them to Europe. So,
Yeah.
it's like if it's not going to be local and stuff like that, then, there's not going to be an extra influx of jobs. So,
I also hate to be too much of a pessimist, but I also think like Scott, what you're going through, like somebody who like was established in the industry, was making like a consistent paycheck, like worked on big shows, stepping back and working into a rental house. I think there's
yeah.
probably a lot of that within the industry.
Yeah.
And so I do think like my story, and Nathan, you know this, is that I came out with 3 to 6 months in savings. I worked a feature and then the phone got cold. And so I worked at a lighting rental house and I passed out 12 business cards a day and tried to just get back on set that way. And it eventually caught. But, I think with so many people that are struggling to find work within the industry that they used to never struggle to find work in, I do think there's probably a lot of us that have jumped into the lighting rental houses or have jumped into the camera rental houses. So like if someone was saying I want to come out to LA next year and I want to try and like be a PA or work in a lighting rental house or work in a camera rental house or work in a prop house, for example, I wouldn't say it's not possible, but it's going to be significantly harder than I think it has been in years past.
For sure.
And it makes it a little hard. Not only, people moving into jobs like that, but also, okay, I can't get the work here, so I'm going to move to the other markets. People moving to Georgia, people moving to Florida,
Sure.
New
Mm-hmm.
York, New Mexico, those places in the US where there are projects that happen.
Yeah.
If they can't get it here, then they've made that move too. So it's kind of making it a little bit of a sticky situation that way too.
There's a lot of people
Absolutely.
that work from home, in the industry. Like a lot of editing is from home, especially in reality TV. Like there was a mass exodus after the pandemic. People don't have to go into the office, so they don't want to. A vast majority of editors do not want to go back to the office. So, they can work from anywhere. I know editors that live in Ohio now, that live in New York, that live in Boston, and they're all working on shows that are technically based in LA.
Yeah, I was coordinating about 10 shows from home that were for a company out in Sacramento
There you
uh,
go.
back in the day. So it was kind of funny
Even
seeing
then.
the work that we were told couldn't be done from home being done from home and kind of proving that. It's kind of sad to see now, but it's a little funny. So I think we're kind of going to wrap it up a little bit. So is there anything that you guys kind of want to talk about before we head off here? Kind of hopes or what you're looking forward to or what you've got going on in the next couple of months before we get off here?
What do you think, Alex?
We can certainly hope that the studios don't want to watch the silly little numbers go down, and they want to come to the table with a ball or with with a plan that works for workers and works for studios. That's definitely something that I would hope for. And if not, I'm going to spend a lot of time riding my bike again. But we can certainly hope for that, and we can hope for that for. I'm presuming a lot of the students that are watching, because if we can't avoid those strikes, I rescind all of the things. You should all move out to LA and pursue the great American dream of working on film and television sets. But so for hopes, I hope for that. I hope for the studios to want to play ball and to want to share that massive piece of pie that they've been eating from.
I feel like, as far as like hopes go, like I feel like unfortunately we'll never go back to what we call normal. I think we're past that. I do hope though that there's a soft landing into a new normal, where there is production and it is steady, but it might be, decentralized from just like, what we were used to. Maybe that there's a similar amount of work, but it might be in some YouTube shows, might be in some here, here and there. It's spread out a little bit more. So I'm hoping that, I feel like that all is going to happen, but since it's all changing so rapidly, it might take a little bit of time for that for the dust to settle. So hopefully we get, some sort of landing into a new normal. But yeah, I mean, I feel like production has to ramp up at some point. Like, they're going to run out of movies. They're going to run out of stuff that's on the shelf, and like they're restricting. Yeah, there's less movies coming out every year, Now, some of them have been really good. You know, the new Dune Part 2 was fantastic. You know,
I
so
still gotta
there's
see it.
really well. I'm not gonna spoil it.
I read the books too. I'm such a massive fan. I just haven't gone out to see it. I gotta see it.
It's fantastic. It's really
Yeah.
it's even better than the first one. So like, there's still good movies being made. You know, but maybe it's harder to do. Who knows? But like, I really do feel like, you know, there has to be some sort of push back to the other side. That's, you know, and hopefully that comes soon. And until then, you know, I'm hoping that, you know, any risks that we take, that, you know, they pay off. You know?
I have one more hope. Uh, I hope Mr. Beast hires me to be a lighting console programmer because those vegan cookies are incredible, man. I gotta tell you, he has like the vegan cookies at the grocery store. They rule. They're so good.
Yeah, the Beastables or whatever.
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
incredible. They taste so good.
yeah. It's like, now we're all Mr. Beast fans.
Yeah, exactly. Let's do it. Yep. I would love to be. I would love to push buttons on that show. I'll make the lights do fun things. Anyways,
A great example, you know, Mr. Beast, but also Hot Ones is a great example.
it's true.
It's an IP that started, and then somebody made a deal, TV size deal, and then they made the Hot Ones game show. So it's
Yeah.
like, these formats will always exist. You know, they're tried and true. People want to see game shows. They want to see reality shows.
Yeah.
They look different. They feel different. Some of them are on islands. Some of them
Yeah.
are in, you know, buildings. So it's like, you know, these things will exist. But we just need them to start shooting them again.
Well, Alex and Scott, I want to thank you guys for coming by and talking with me for a little bit. And I want to thank everyone for checking this latest episode of Cardinal Control Room out. This is again brought to you by the Ball State Department of Media Alumni Society. So thanks again, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Nathan, thanks for rounding us up. Jeremy, thanks for recording everything. Thanks to the Alumni Association for having us.
I second that.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much, guys.